Hi everyone, it's that time again when you might be starting to think about your year end. The year end process itself is straightforward. It's a simple wizard that includes a few options. However, before this, there's the preparation stage, ensuring you've posted everything, and of course, it involves running reports. But do you understand your reports and also the opportunities that you have to develop them? Ensuring they're accurate, but also that they provide you with a correct level of detail. Throughout January and February, we're running a series of live webinars to help develop your knowledge and understanding of the management reports available in Sage 50 accounts. We'll be starting with the basics, understanding nominal records and the structure of the nominal ledger. This is also ideal if you need to create new nominal codes. Following on from this, we'll examine the chart of accounts, looking at all aspects, including adding new layouts and editing existing ones. Our attention then turns to the management reports themselves, the trial balance, the profit and loss, and of course the balance sheet. We'll explain how to run them, what they show, and most importantly, how the figures calculate. We want you to be confident. On the management report session, one of the most common scenarios we're asked about is where you haven't yet run your year end, but need to generate a profit and loss report for your next financial year. We've got your back with this and have a specific webinar that explores the options you have available, whether it's running reports for your new financial year or even a previous one. The last webinar in the series looks at reconciling your age debtors and age creditor reports at year end, ensuring that the balances agree with the figures on your trial balance and the balance sheet. Of course, this could be done at any time, such as part of your month-end process. So come along and we'll demonstrate what to check and how to run them to ensure everything agrees. If you'd like to attend any or all of these sessions to help develop your knowledge and boost your confidence, then simply head along to sage.co.uk/webinars and register for your free place. These, along with loads of other topics, including how to run your year end, are available. See you soon.
Hi everybody! You might be approaching the end of your financial year and it's the perfect time to get your Sage 50 accounts in order. The year-end process itself is simple. It doesn't matter if you're a seasoned pro or if it's your first time, it's just a few steps in the wizard. But before you dive in, there are some important checks and housekeeping tasks that will just make everything run smoothly. Things like archiving your company data just keeps it organised and improves performance. We'll show you how to create an archive and why it's a good habit. Then there's backing up your data, which is essential before making any changes, and we'll share best practice just to ensure your backups are reliable. And avoid accidental postings into a closed period by setting a lock date. It's quick to do and it saves headaches later. We'll also guide you through the year-end wizard as well, step by step, so you can complete the process with confidence. If you need to tidy up older unused records, we'll show you how to do that as well in our Delete Your Records webinar. And then we'll also cover how to clear the audit trail. It can help speed things up and we'll explain when it's appropriate and how to do that safely. So to help you to prepare, we're hosting a series of live webinars throughout January and February. These sessions will give you practical tips and demonstrations so you feel confident about your year end and keep your accounts in great shape. Don't miss this opportunity to start the new year with clean, organised data and peace of mind. Make sure you reserve your spot today at sage.co.uk/webinars, and we look forward to seeing you there. Hello, everybody. I hope everybody's well today. Today's webinar is going to be going over running your year end, and that's going to be presented by myself. My name's Laura, if you've not heard me before. We've also got Michael in the background as well. He's sitting there ready to answer any questions that you may have around today's topic. So make sure you get them across to him and keep him busy during the next 45 minutes or so there. So before we get started, just as usual, some housekeeping rules there. So your mic is going to be muted automatically, but you'll see there is a little question icon on the toolbar where you can submit any questions that you may have for Michael. So make sure you pop them in there and keep him busy. And I'll also be including the slides in the handout section as well, as there are links at the end which you might find useful. So if you do want to download those, make sure you do that during the session there. And as always, there is that printer friendly version as well, just if you want to print it out and make some notes. So before we get started, I just want to launch a quick poll there, just to see when you would normally run your year end, or if it's not something that you've done before, when you think that you should run your year end. So I'm just going to pop that on your screen there now. You should be able to see that coming through there now. So I just want to see how long after your year end should you run the year end process. So we've got within a month, either 1 to 2 months. Do you think it should be ran within 3 to 6 months? Or over 6 months, or just when you're ready. So if you pop your answer in there, and I just want to see, just really for our records, what people think is the right answer on there for it. If you're not too sure, or if you've never ran one before, that's fine. Just pop an answer in there. It's not a problem. I'll give you a few moments there just to get those in. It looks like we've got a nice sort of split across them at the moment there. I'll give you a few more seconds just to see if anybody else wants to pop an answer on there. Right, I'll save that now and I'll just share those results. So it's quite a bit of a sort of a split across there. So we've got 20% people think within a month. We've got, again, 20% think within 1 to 2 months, 10% think within 3 to 6 months, the same with over 6 months. And then we've got the majority think with, which is 40%, which is just when you're ready there. So it is a bit of a trick question. There's no sort of right or wrong answer when it comes to when you should run your year end. So you can actually run it when you're ready there. So it could really be any of those answers, but ultimately it's just when you're ready there. So you could be ready in 1 to 2 months, could be over 6 months when you're ready. So if that's what you voted for, you'd be correct. But if you've answered any of the others, again, if you're ready at that point, then that's absolutely fine to do it then. I think sometimes there can be a bit of confusion over can you post into your new financial year, even if you haven't ran your year end process for the previous financial year? And I'll be coming on to that in a bit as well. So today we're going to be having a look at a few common questions around the year end. And then I've also got some demonstrations that we'll go through as well, just so we can see what it looks like in the programme. We're going to have a look at things like preparing for the year end and the tasks that are involved in that. And then we'll also be having a look at actually running the year end process, just so you can see what it looks like. So when you're ready to actually click that button and physically run that year end, what does it look like? And then also any post year end checks as well. So things like how do you know it's run through successfully, and checks that you can carry out as well. So firstly, those common questions. So the ones that I used to get when I was on technical support. So one of them used to be, do you need to run the year end before processing in the new financial year? And the short answer is no. You can continue to enter transactions and complete other processes in your new financial year as long as normal, basically. And then you can come back to run your year end when you're ready. Some people even run their year end 6 months into their new financial year. And it's all just depending on when you're ready to run it. So if you remember, when you run the year end, the program, it's going to pick up the dates of your postings on there. So it's not going to pick anything up that you're posting into your new financial year because it goes off the dates. So you're completely fine to continue to work as normal in your new financial year. And then when you're ready to run your financial year process, you can run that. Another common question I used to get was, can I shorten or extend my financial year? So by default, Sage 50 Accounts runs a 12-month financial year. However, you can, if you need to shorten it or if you need to extend it so your new financial year starts sooner than it should or later than it should do on there, you can absolutely do that. The step-by-step guides are available on our help centre. The links are just there. You can see them just on the slide. There's one there to shorten and one to extend that financial year, but they're easy to find on the help centre. But yes, that's something that you can do. You can shorten it and you can extend it. And then I've also been asked as well, why does it take so long to run the year end? And that just depends on things like the size of your data, the hardware that you're using, and if you're running it across a network, so if you use a server or if the data is held on another PC, all these things can contribute to how long it takes to run it. And it'll be different for everybody. You'll see in my demonstration when I run it, it's going to be super quick, to the point where if you blink, you might miss it because I've got a very small data set, but it's also local on my computer as well. So it'll be quite quick when I run it. So the first thing to think about was when completing all the processing for the financial year to running the year end. And it's why some people wait a few months before they run it because they know they still have postings to go into that period. So the longer that you leave it, the more likely that you're going to have everything posted into the financial year that needs to be there. You'll be running things like management reports as part of your year end too. And if you haven't entered all of the transactions, then they won't pick up all those values. So it's best just to wait until you've got everything entered before you run that year end. Remember, you can just continue processing as normal into your new financial year. So there's no sort of rush to try and get that done as quickly as possible. So with regards to that, like I say, you can just continue processing as normal in that new financial year. Absolutely fine having not run your year end. Some people run it 6 months into the new financial year. And I do think that some people, they do tend to worry that continuing to process is going to mess up the financial year for them. But like I said earlier, you're entering a date whenever you post anything into the system, and that's where it picks the information up from. So when you run your year end, it's picking it up from the dates on there. With regards to your management reports, though, if that's something that you're not hugely familiar with, Michael is running through a webinar on these in more detail on Tuesday, the 17th of February as well. So I think that's at 11 o'clock there. So if you do want to get signed up for that as well. But anybody who's run the year end before may know that there is a check your chart of accounts button in the year end section. I'm going to show you how to do that manually, just because if you're at the point of running a year end and you're checking it for the first time and you find that there's issues at that point, it's just going to be stressful for you because you'll have already ran your management reports at that point, and things like your profit and loss and the balance sheet use your chart of accounts. So if that's wrong, your management reports are going to be wrong too. So just better to make sure that it's all okay prior to getting to that stage. So I'm going to show you how to do that in just a moment. But Michael is also going to be covering the chart of accounts in more depth on Tuesday, the 10th of February. So I'll just be touching on it today, but he's going to be going through that in more depth. I put links to both the webinars on there as well, just to make it a bit easier. Now, there's also not a definitive list of reports to run at year end, but there are common ones that you might want to run. So things like your trial balance, your profit and loss, your balance sheet, age debtors, creditors, things like that. Then you've also got checking your data and taking a backup, which you would do as part of the year-end process, but it's always good just to make sure, like your chart of accounts, that there's no surprises when you get to that point of running the year-end. Best to sort of sort all of that out before you're ready to run that year-end, and I'll be going through that as well. So I'll pop into my system now, and we'll have a look and just see what a few things look like first of all there. So firstly, be making sure that you've complete all the processing for that financial year that you're going to be running. So things like checking your transactions. We won't know this obviously because it's going to be individual to every business, but you should have a good grasp on what goes where, and anything you're not too sure about, you can check with your accountant. But the one thing I did want to show you first was checking that chart of accounts. So as part of your year end, you would do that anyway. But to do that manually before you even get to that stage, if we go into nominal codes, and we've got chart of accounts just here at the top. So I'm going to click on chart of accounts at the top and it'll open this window for me. Now, you might have more than one chart of accounts in here. I've just got the one showing in here, which is just my default. Some companies do tend to use more than one on there, and that's absolutely fine. But I'm just going to click edit just to open that up. Okay, so you can see that on there. Now, checking the chart of accounts is really easy. We just got in the top left-hand corner, there's a check button. All we need to do is click that, and it's telling me no errors found in this chart of accounts. So that means I know that there's nothing being missed out on there, nice and simple. The most common thing that we do see if there's a problem with the chart of accounts is that if, say, you've created a new nominal code and it's not being captured within the ranges on here. So if I just show you what that means, at the moment, my product sales go from 4,000 up to 4,099. So it's capturing all the nominal codes between those numbers. If I just change that, and I'm just going to change it so it just picks up 4,000 in that range, I'll just save that. Tells me it's incomplete, so I know it's an incomplete set already. It's updated that for me, and it says partial on here as well. I'm going to go back in and just check it again so I can show you what the difference looks like. So if I click on check again, I pull this over here, we'll just preview that. And I'll just make that a bit bigger because you probably can't see that on your screen. So it tells me what the issue is on here. So we've got all these nominal codes that I did have before that were showing in the chart of accounts. They're now not represented in that chart of accounts. So if you've got a nominal code that's not represented, it just means that you need to have it included on that range so it pulls it through. But like I say, Michael's going to be going through that. It's a full webinar in itself, the chart of accounts there. He's going to be going through that next Tuesday at 11. So I just wanted to give you a quick idea, and I'll change that back as well so it doesn't miss those out. Pop that back on there and save that. He's going to be going through the chart of accounts in a lot more detail, but just so you've got an idea of what that looks like on there. And the main reason for that is because things like your profit and loss, balance sheet, things like that, they all use your chart of accounts when you're running those management reports. So you just need to make sure that it's picking absolutely everything up on there. The next thing you might want to be looking at doing is running your year-end reports. So if you're not sure which reports that you want to or you need to be running, you can again check with your accountant just to see what it is that they want to see. Things like the trial balance, profit and loss, and balance sheet, those are the common ones again. And again, we are running those the webinars on the management reports as well. But we'll just go into one just to have a look at it, just so you can see what that looks like. So we've got them just up here. We've got trial balance, profit and loss, and balance sheet. So they're nice and easy just to get to. So if I click on my trial balance, this little window over, I'm just going to run that and preview it just so you can see what that looks like. And just to show you, in the criteria values, we've got a drop down. So my current financial year that I'm in at the moment is January 2025 up to the end of December 2025. So you can see there it's given me all the months in 2025. Just one thing to point out, the numbers beforehand, they just relate to the month on there. So 12 being the 12th month in the year. So it's not related to the 12th of December, which I have been asked before on there. So if we leave that as it is, 12th of December, so it's running it at the end of December for me, I'm going to just say OK to that. And I'll just make that a bit bigger and zoom in a bit so you can see that as well. So we've got here my trial balance, which I would then either print out. I'll just scroll down so you can see it all. So we've got all of our balance sheet. We've got profit and loss in there as well. Scroll back up to the top so you can print it from here, just in the top top left-hand corner. Email it if you need to. You can export it as well, save it as a PDF if you want to. So then you've got that saved as well. I'm not going to save mine though, but just so you know that you can save that. So say in future, 2 years down the line, and you think, what was my figures on my trial balance at the end of 2025? You've got a PDF version of it there, which you can then go back to. So that's running those reports on there as well before you're getting to that point of running the year end. The next step would be things like checking your data, making sure that you've got a backup as well, which is nice and straightforward. So for the backup, we're going to go to File at the top, we're going to go to Backup on here. And when we go into this option, it'll just tell us it's going to close all of the open windows there. And that's fine. We haven't got anything else open. Drag that across here. So from here, we can take a backup of the company. And when we take a backup, So I'm just going to leave it as data files, but if you want to take a full backup, you can absolutely do that as well, just by ticking those boxes. You can tick them and untick them. And you can change the name as well, or pop in just if you wanted to before the financial year end, if you wanted to in there as well. But if I click OK to that, it'll ask me if I want to check my data before I back it up. And I can just say yes at that point, and it'll just run through checking the data for me. So it's nice and straightforward. So you're getting those 2 steps in there in one. You can check the data manually as well without taking a backup, just by going to File at the top and then clicking on Maintenance, which I'll show you in a moment. It'll bring up the same window that we'll see in a minute once it's finished checking the data on here. But it's very important to take that backup and also to check the data before you run the year-end process, because you don't want any sort of errors or any warnings in there when you're going to run that year-end. So we can see here it's found no errors, which is great, no warnings, brilliant. It's got 14 comments in there, which I'm not overly worried about, but we can check what these are just by clicking on errors. There's none, no warnings, brilliant. And then we've got a few comments on there. So the comments I'm not too concerned about on there. So it's just about the item quantity is 0 on there for it. And we've got a stock transaction comment too. So I'm not concerned about those. If you do have errors or warnings though, by all means, have a look on our help centre. We've got an A to Z. If you just type in A to Z, it'll bring up, there's a checklist which will tell you what the errors are that you have on there. I'll close out of that for now. My backup's been successful, so that's great. So I've got my backup and my data's all fine. The other way that you can just check the data without taking that backup is just by going to File at the top, clicking on Maintenance, and it brings up this window on here, and we can just click on Check Data. Last results just gives me that window that I had before, which is that one there, just tells us the information in it. That's just a way of just quickly checking the data without having to take that backup. So I'll close out with that there. So I'll just pop back to my slides briefly. So with regards to the year-end process, it can seem like quite a daunting thing to be running on there. When I worked on technical support, we would get a lot of calls in asking for help guiding people through the process. But the reaction at the end was always, oh, is that it? Because you'll see the actual process itself is straightforward. The system guides you through it all. And if you've done the checks beforehand, so like we've just had a look at, checking your data, checking your chart of accounts, taking that backup, you've got running your reports as well, you're going to have no surprises when you're ready to actually hit that button to run the year end there. But how long it takes, as mentioned earlier, that does depend on the size of your data. And if you're over a network, so that just means if your data is held on a server, or if you have a main PC and yours is connected to that one, it might take a bit longer. And also, it just depends on the hardware that you're using as well, and the level of data as well. Some companies will have a lot of data, some will have a lot less in there. It'll be different for everybody. But it'll, like I say, it'll look really fast when I run it through on my demonstration there, because it's local on my PC and it's a really, really small data set there. But when you open the wizard, so the wizard that you can see on the screen there, you're going to get some options which we'll have a look at now. So I'll pop back into my program there. And we'll have a look at that. What I should say as well, or when running the year end, you'll need to ask other colleagues to come out of the programme while you're completing this process. So other people can't continue working while you're running that year end on there. I have seen some people who just sort of set it away and just leave it running at the end of the day there. But you will need to ask other people to log out. And you can run it from any PC at any location as well. So there's no problem in doing that. But the wizard, if we go to tools at the top, and I'm going to go down to period end, and then I'm going to choose year end, and it's going to open up the wizard on the other screen. Just drag that over there so we can have a look at this. So it's broken down into 3 sections, and you can see that we have got the prepare for the year end, which is the top one here, and we've got some of which we looked at manually there, so there's no surprises at this point. Because if you think, right, I'm ready to run my year end, you check your data and you've got errors, or you check your chart of accounts and there's an issue, you don't want to be finding it at this point. So if you've done all of that, that's great. I would still say when you come in at this time, still check your data just in case it was a couple of days ago and anything's happened, and check your chart of accounts as well, just to be on the safe side, and then take your backup as well. But we've done all of those manually just beforehand, which you saw. The next part of it is obviously after you've created your backup, we've got the option to create an archive. So you may have seen the archive webinar, which I've gone through recently on there. So your archive is always ticked by default on there. And what it does is it takes a screenshot of sort of your entire company data from the very beginning when you started it up until right at this point in time. So if I did it right now, it would be at 2:20 on, what day is it today? On the 2nd of February there. So that's when it takes it up until, so it'll have absolutely everything in there. I would always say leave that ticked. Even if you're not 100% sure what it's for, it's better to have an archive than and not need it than actually, need one and think, oh, I didn't take an archive before I ran my year end. So it's best just to have that. And I'll come on to it a little bit later on as well. So we're going to leave that ticked. The next option we've got here is for your year-end options for things like setting budgets. So you can set your next year's budgets, your nominal and your stock budgets on your current year actuals or your budget values as well. So if I just tick that box, it'll open up another window. I'll just pull that over there. If you don't use budgets, you don't need to do anything with this. If you do use budgets, what it's saying is that once you've run the year end, you have the option to set the budgets for your next financial year. And ticking that box there gives us some options, which is this window here. So if you want to create nominal and department budgets, I'm going to have ticked it and then decide what I want to do, base them on my actual sales figures from my financial year I'm just finishing, or, which is just here, or do I want to base them on the existing budgets and leave those in place? Or if you're on the standard or professional level, you might be on the advanced budgeting method and you might want to use the forecast on there for it. So it's just giving you those options on there. Now, whichever option you choose, you still have the option to amend those figures if necessary on there. But there is a whole webinar on budgets. So I think Michael ran through those last week and the week before. So they are on our recordings page. So if you do want to find out a bit more about budgets on there, take a look at the recordings page on there because he's gone through those in more depth. And I don't want to go into too much detail on budgets on here just because it's going to take away from that year-end process that we're trying to concentrate on. But there is the option also to create stock budgets as well on here. So if you do want to base them on the actuals or if you want to continue with the budgets that you've got in place, so you've got those options in there as well. We'll just close out with that for now. And then we've got our year-end journals on here. So this window here with the date in it. So this just tells us the date to appear on the year-end journals. And we normally say when you're running your financial year-end, it would be the last day of your current financial year. So mine would be the 31st of December 2025. Okay. And what that does is on there, when you run the year-end process, the system's going to post journals to clear your profit and loss year-end balances. So anything on nominal codes 4,000 and onwards, if you're using the default nominal structure, so things like sales and purchases, direct overheads, etc., it's going to look at those balances at the end of the financial year and it's going to post a journal to clear that balance as of the end of your financial year. So the date that you would have in here is going to be the last day of your financial year, and then it's going to post it to your retained earnings on there. So if you've got a profit and loss nominal code, which has got a credit balance on there, it's going to post the opposite of that, the journal debit on there, and it'll post it into your retained earnings, which is normally by default 3,200. And then the last part of your year-end options is the lock date on there. And again, that's a separate webinar in itself. You might have been on and seen that one. But basically what the lock date does is it just prevents new transactions from being entered before this date. So what I'd be saying here is, and it says in brackets there, usually the first day of your new financial year, which for me would be the 1st January 2026. And the lock date is a date which you can set, which just prevents users from posting, deleting, or editing anything before that date. And what it'll do is it'll either present that person with a message telling the user that there is a lock date, and if they do wish to proceed, they can override it. So I think the manager has that by default on there, but it all comes down to the settings of the user. Or they'll get an error message which just prevents them from posting anything into that period. It'll just tell them there's a lock date, they can't post into that period. I think it is going to be on the recordings page as well, because I did that last week. I think it was the lock date webinar. So again, if you want a bit more information on the lock date, that's just covered on our recordings page there. And then we've got the summary. So in the summary window, it tells us everything it's going to do when we click on Run the Year End. So it tells us that it's running the year end for the 31st of December 2025, and that's going to change my financial year to the 1st of January 26 to the 31st of December 26. It's going to transfer my balances from my profit and loss accounts to retained earnings. So that's those journals that were mentioned up here. It's going to set profit and loss nominal accounts for the new financial year. And also it's going to create that archive of the data as well. And that's important just to have that archive there as well. If we're using budgets, I've got mine ticked. If I untick it, you'll see it'll disappear. So the budgets have gone from in there. But if you're using budgets, I'll just click that back on. It'll create the nominal budgets and it'll create stock budgets for me as well. And then it's going to set that lock date as well. So depending on your user level, you can either post or you're going to get an error message saying you can't post anything before that date. Okay. So I'm going to click on Run Year End now, and if you'll blink, you'll probably miss it because it is quite a small set. But if I click on Run Year End, we'll get a message just telling us, it's letting us know we're about to run the year end. Do we want to continue, just in case we've clicked it by accident? I'm going to say yes, and I'm confident at this because I've got my backup. I've got my archive as well. So you've always got the backup there as well, which you would have taken. I'm just going to say yes to that, and it'll run through that in the background. Drag this over. It's done it so quickly. See what I mean by blinking? You miss it on mine. And we'll preview that. Click OK to that, and it's going to show me these journals. Before we go and have a look at that, you'll also get a message that tells you that it's run on here as well. So we know that it's ran. It says the year-end process for the financial year ending the 31st of December 2025 is complete. And the new financial year now is the 1st of January 26 to the 31st of December 2026. And before I click OK, if we have a look just down in the bottom right-hand corner, we can see here, it shows us January 2025. So that's the financial year I've just ran. When I click that, just say, yeah, OK to that, happy with that. It shows now I'm in January 2026. So you can see the financial year start down in the bottom right-hand corner. So if you're not too sure, you can have a look at it down there. Don't be tempted to run the financial year again, because what you'll end up doing is you'll move forward a year and you'll be in January 27 to December 27 on there. So don't be tempted to just click it again if you're not too sure. There's a few checks you can do. So those journals that I mentioned, I'll just scroll in and show you. You'll probably have a lot more than this. You'll probably have a lot more nominal codes. Mine's quite small, as I mentioned. But this is telling us all the profit and loss nominal codes that it's cleared down, and it's posted the difference to my retained earnings there, which is my 3200 nominal code. So it gives us a list. And you can print that, you can email it, you can export it just in the top if you want to. You can send it to Excel if you want to as well, just so you've got a copy of that. So I'll close out of that. So those few checks on there, the obvious ones, you've got the message that popped up on the screen telling you that that financial year has been ran, and also in the bottom right hand corner it tells us that it's been ran as well. So just going to pop back to my slides there. So there are some optional post-year checks that you can do. So checking the financial year has advanced from the bottom right hand corner, which we've just looked at. And you can also check in your help and about as well. So help at the very top in the middle of your screen, and then about, and then under configuration information on the left-hand side, it tells you the financial year that you're in as well. You could also run a trial balance and select the brought forward balance. There should be no profit and loss balances now because obviously they've been cleared down, and we'll have a look at that. I'll pop back into my system and I'll show you that in just a moment there, because it's all fine and well sometimes seeing it on a screen on a PowerPoint like that, but sometimes it's nice to see it in the program there as well. So I'll pop back in a moment and show you that too. And then also, once you've run your year end, just run another check data, make sure it's all in good health, and also take another backup. So you've got a backup beforehand and a backup after on there. Before we pop back into my data, the other thing that I wanted to briefly cover, because I will be covering it more detail on Wednesday, the 11th of February at 11, but that's just that archiving the data. So that tick box that I said, just to leave it ticked when we ran through the year-end wizard. Now, what the archive does is it takes a snapshot of absolutely everything, but it's a read-only copy of the data there. So you can't delete records, and amending details is limited to GDPR purposes. But you can, however, run things like your management reports for a previous year from your archives, which you do have the option of running your transactional reports and entering the financial year date, but that's going to include those year-end journals in there. So they'll be different, and I'll show you the difference between them in a moment there. But you might wonder, well, why not just do this from a backup taken before around the year end? But the beauty of an archive is that you don't have to sit and wait for it to restore back in, nor does anybody have to log out either. You can just access it like another company, and it'll just pop back into my system. And I'll show you that now as well, along with that, the management report there with the brought forward balance. So I'll open up my system again so we can have a look at that. So if we go back to nominal codes, and we'll just have a look at the brought forward balance on our trial balance there. I'll just drag this across because it likes to open on my other screen. So I'll just run that. So you can see now we've got December 2026 showing in there. So before, when we looked at this, before I ran my year end, sorry, it was all 2025. Now we've run that year forward. We're now in January 26 to December 26 financial year. And at the top here, we've got that brought forward option. So I'm going to highlight that one. That's what I'm going to select this time. So it's my brought forward balance as of the beginning of the new financial year. And I'm just going to say OK to that. I made that a bit bigger so you can see that on there. Just scrolling a bit. So we can see here we've got our trial balance on here. Tells us it's the brought forward period. And if we scroll down, we can see that stops. We've got nothing going past 3200 on there. We've got no profit and loss codes showing in there because they've all been cleared down. So we know that that's cleared down from our financial year end being ran. Okay, and I'll show you what it looks like just when it's different when we go into the archive, which we took just before running the year end, so you can see the difference. If we pop into transactions just quickly as well, you can also check because you've got your ledger year end journals. So they all show in here. So that list that you got when we ran the year end, which you could save as a PDF or print out, they're all showing in here as well. So we know that our year end has been ran because we've got these year end journals, which were posted as of the 31st of December 2025. So that's another good way to check that the year ends ran. With regards to the archive, so that archive that we took before we ran that year end, so if you think, right, I'm going to have to restore a backup in, I'm going to have to sit and wait while it does it to look at the figures, what you can do is for an archive, if we go to File at the top and just choose Open and then Open Company Archive, just tells us it's going to close all of the windows. If I drag this across because it's opened up over there, these are all my archives on here. So I've got some mid-year ones that I've taken. Maybe it's when I've been clearing the audit trail perhaps on there. This is the one that I've just done here, which was my year end just taken today. All I'm going to do is click open to that. Let it have a little quick think about it on there just while it pops it back in. Log back in. And this would be your login details at the time that your archive was taken. and that's you back in. So you can see how quick that is getting back. And that's not because I've got a small data set, that's just opening an archive. So that's how quick it is. And you can see along the top, it tells me I'm in an archive, so I'm not in a live data set. But just so I can show you what that trial balance looks like. So remember, this here is as of, I think it was 2:20 I said before. So it was before I ran my year end. If I wanted to run my management reports and get those figures, I can now run them in here. Just drag that across. So say you thought you'd ran them, you've lost them, or you don't know where you've put them, you can go into your archive, just make that bigger, zoom in. Tells us it's from an archive, that's fine. But if we scroll down on here, we've got all of our profit and loss codes in there as well. So we've got everything showing, and it goes down a bit further on there as well. So we've got everything showing in there. Nothing's been cleared down at this point. So that's another handy tip for why to take that archive, not just because it's easier to get into, but you can run those figures as well there. You can run those reports. And then just to go back into your live company, it's just file at the top, down to open, and open company data. Just tells us it's going to close all open windows and we'll lose any unsaved data, but I've got nothing open on there. And what it'll do is it'll just pop me back into my live data. So I just need to log back in. And that's me back in my live data. So if you were thinking, if you haven't taken an archive, if you imagine you've got to restore everything back in there, if people have got to log off because you've got to restore things in, that's just a super quick way of being able to get to those details there. I'll just pop back to my slides. So there are optional tasks which a lot of people think happen during the year-end process, such as clearing out old transactions, as well as old customer and supplier records that are no longer used, deleting invoices, orders, clearing out stock. These are all optional tasks, just not everybody wants to remove older records there. So these can all be done after running your financial year. If you want to, you don't have to. That's why they're optional tasks on there. But we are going to be running live webinars covering all of these topics over the next couple of weeks. So make sure you get signed up for those too. So things like clearing the audit trail. So it removes old transactions from the audit trail there. If you've got old customers or suppliers or nominals or bank accounts, you can also clear those out as well. Clearing things like your stock or delete product records, invoices and orders as well. And then compressing your data. So compressing your data, it basically just means if you think of your data like a bookcase, you take some of the old books out, so some of your old records, you're removing them out of there, but then you've got books dotted around all over your bookcase. What compressing the data does is it pushes all the books to one side, so you've got all of your data neatly in one place, and then you've got all of the free space free in one place as well. So it just makes everything run a bit more efficiently and just tidies things up in the background there. But there is just a link on the slide as well, just takes you straight to our sign up page, and you can also see the recordings from there as well. But those are good webinars which are coming up there too. So I'll just keep this open for a little bit longer. I can see you're keeping Michael nice and busy on there as well. So there's quite a few questions come in on there. So hopefully it looks like he's on top of them from there, which I can see. So I'll keep that open for a few more moments. That's it, yeah. Just see Simon's just popped on that he's done the webinar before, but he just wanted to get the handouts. That's absolutely fine, Michael. That's not a problem at all. But yes, so it looks like he's up to date on there for it. So I'll just pop on to our next slide. So if I do go silent for a moment, it's just because I'm reading some of the questions that are there. So I've added some links on here just to guides on our help centre around running your financial year here too. So we've also got webinars running around the optional tasks like I mentioned, but things like backing up and protecting your data as well. So I'm going to be running through that in more detail tomorrow at 2 o'clock. And then we've also got Michael going through clearing the audit trail on Wednesday at 2 o'clock as well. So the following week covers how to clear the audit trail. So that's all if you've got a lot of older transaction in there as well. So we're going to be covering that and removing old records. So there, you can all sign up for them just on that register for the webinar link on there as well. But the guides are on there too for it. Lydia, I can see you're asking a question just about charities on there. I'll get back to you just via your email just at the end there, if that's okay, just to get a bit more information. So I haven't forgotten about you when it ends on there. Just to let you know as well, we've also got our community hub, which, if you haven't seen this before, is an online forum for Sage 50 Accounts users to share knowledge, swap ideas and solve problems together. So it's free to join. And you can ask questions here along with using or getting information from other Sage experts and as well as other customers as well on there. So it's quite handy to use. You can also keep updated with what's happening, and it's open 24/7 as well. But there is a link there which just takes you straight through to the hub as well. And I've also included an additional survey as well, which I hope you don't mind taking a quick look. It's basically just to help us shape our learning around what matters to you most on there. There's a QR code which you can just scan with your phone, but there's also a link on the slide here, just when you download those documents, if you've got time and you wouldn't mind having a look there as well. I'm just going to double check the questions just to see if there's anything else coming in there. We've got Liam's asking about running your profit and loss and trial balance reports after running your year end. If you haven't kept an archive on there, is it that you've ran the year end and you've unticked that box, Liam, or did somebody else run the archive? Just with regards to archives, what I will point out is archives are only stored on the PC where they've been taken. So if the financial year has been ran or the archive's been ran elsewhere on another PC, somebody else might have an archive there. If not, it's going to be looking at running possibly a transactional one. But I can come back to you after the webinar's ended there, Liam. But as I say, thank you for attending that on there. Any other questions that we haven't got? I think it's just those couple on there, which I'll get back to via email. But I hope that you found that useful. And you can see running the year end, it's actually quite straightforward. It's just making sure that you've got all those little checks done and in place before you hit that button on there. But as always, you're going to get that survey when leaving today's session. But I'd love it if you could leave us any feedback or any comments about what else you'd like to see on a webinar, perhaps, or if there's anything that you'd like seen done differently, or if there's anything that you enjoyed. We'll read every comment that comes through. We do enjoy reading those on there as well. But I'd just like to say thank you for attending today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day there. Thanks for attending.